The morning sun cast long shadows across the makeshift refugee camp as William adjusted his medical supplies for what seemed like the 100th time. His hands trembled slightly, not from the weight of the equipment, but from the knowledge that in just 3 hours, he would have to say goodbye to Kate. The international evacuation order had been clear. All non-essential personnel must leave immediately. Kate, as a journalist, fell into that category. William, as the lead doctor at the camp, did not. They had met 2 years ago in this very place, when the civil war first erupted in the small Eastern European nation of Moldania. Kate had arrived with a BBC crew to document the humanitarian crisis, while William had come with Doctors Without Borders. Their first encounter had been anything but romantic. Kate had accidentally knocked over his entire tray of medical supplies while trying to get a shot of the overcrowded medical tent. He had been furious, she had been apologetic, and somehow, over lukewarm coffee and stale biscuits that night, they had fallen into easy conversation. Now, watching her pack her equipment into weathered cases, William felt his heart constrict. The camp around them buzzed with activity as other journalists and aid workers prepared for evacuation. The rebel forces were advancing, and the government had finally admitted they could no longer guarantee the safety of international workers. But someone had to stay with the refugees, the thousands of families who had nowhere else to go. Kate looked up from her packing and caught his eye. Even from across the crowded tent, he could see the tears she was fighting back. They had argued about this for 3 days straight. She wanted him to leave with her. He couldn't abandon his patients. She understood. It was one of the things she loved about him. But understanding didn't make it easier. The camp itself was a sprawling collection of white tents and temporary structures that housed nearly 10,000 displaced people. Children played between the tent rows, their laughter a strange contrast to the distant sound of artillery fire that had become the soundtrack of their lives. William knew each section of the camp by heart. The pediatric area where he spent most mornings, the maternity ward where he had delivered 43 babies in the past month, the isolation unit where they battled a recent outbreak of cholera. Sarah, one of the nurses, approached him with a clipboard. "Doctor, we need to go over the supply inventory before the evacuation convoy leaves. We're running low on antibiotics again." William nodded, grateful for the distraction. "Let's check what we have. With the evacuation, we might be able to convince some of the other organizations to leave their medical supplies." As they walked through the camp, William's mind drifted to all the mornings he and Kate had made this same journey together. She would be documenting the stories of the refugees while he conducted his rounds. They had developed a rhythm. She knew when to step back and let him work. And he knew when a patient's story needed to be told to the world. The Petrov family waved from their tent as he passed. Their youngest, Anna, had been critically ill with pneumonia just last week. Now she ran toward him, arms outstretched. William caught her and swung her up, her delighted giggle momentarily lifting the weight from his chest. "Dr. William," she said in her broken English. "You save me." Her mother emerged from the tent, tears in her eyes as she clasped William's hand. She spoke rapidly in Moldanian, which William had learned enough of to understand. She was blessing him, thanking him for giving her daughter back. This was why he couldn't leave. After setting Anna down, he continued his rounds, but his thoughts kept returning to Kate. She had been more than just his partner here. She had been his anchor. In a place where death and suffering were daily companions, she had helped him remember why the work mattered. Her stories had brought international attention to the crisis, had brought more aid, more volunteers, more hope. The mess tent was nearly empty when he found her there, sitting alone with a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. She looked up as he approached, and he saw that she had given up fighting the tears. 2 more hours, she whispered, as he sat beside her. He took her hand, feeling the familiar calluses from her camera equipment. "We knew this day might come. Knowing doesn't make it easier." She turned to face him fully. "William, please, come with me. You've done enough here. You've saved so many lives, and there are more to save." His voice was gentle but firm. You know I can't leave them. Not now. The fighting is getting worse. The refugees have nowhere else to go. If the medical staff leaves, they die. Kate finished the sentence, her voice hollow. I know. God. I know. It's what makes you who you are. It's why I fell in love with you. And it's why I'm terrified I'm never going to see you again. William pulled her close, feeling her body shake with silent sobs. Around them, the camp continued its daily rhythm. Children attending makeshift schools. Women preparing meals over portable stoves. Men gathered in groups discussing news from the front lines. It was a small city of the displaced, held together by hope and the dedication of people like William. Remember our plan, he said softly into her hair. You get to London, file your stories, and raise hell about what's happening here. Make them pay attention. Make them send more aid. And when this is over, and it will be over, I'll find you. You promise? Her voice was muffled against his chest. I promise. They sat in silence for a while, holding each other as the minutes ticked by. Through the tent's opening, William could see the evacuation convoy beginning to form. A line of white UN vehicles and beat-up trucks that would carry the international workers to the airport in the capital. From there, military transports would fly them to safety. Dr. Sarah appeared at the tent entrance. William, we have an emergency. The Robinson child. His fever has spiked. Kate pulled back, wiping her eyes. Go, she said. Save lives. It's what you do. He kissed her forehead and stood, but she caught his hand. Wait. I have something for you. From her pocket, she pulled out a small photo. One she had taken of them during a rare, quiet moment, sitting on supply crates and laughing at something he could no longer remember. On the back, she had written, Until we meet again. All my love. K. He tucked it carefully into his shirt pocket, over his heart. I'll keep it safe. The emergency with the Robinson child turned out to be meningitis. Serious, but treatable if caught early. William lost himself in the work, administering antibiotics, monitoring vital signs, instructing the nurses on the care protocol. It was easier than thinking about what was happening outside. When he finally emerged from the medical tent, the convoy was fully assembled. Journalists, aid workers, and support staff were saying their final goodbyes to the friends and colleagues who were staying behind. The air was thick with emotion, tears, embraces, promises to stay in touch, to come back when it was safe. He found Kate standing beside a UN truck, her equipment already loaded. She was interviewing one of the refugee families, her professional mask in place. But he could see the strain around her eyes. When she saw him approaching, she quickly finished the interview and handed her camera to her colleague. They stood facing each other, surrounded by people but feeling entirely alone. I've left letters, she said quickly, as if she had rehearsed this. With Sarah, with the camp administrator, with the Red Cross coordinator. If something happens to me, they'll know to contact you. I've done the same for you. Letters with my editor, my family, my flatmate. Just in case. Nothing's going to happen, William said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. I've also left 3 months' worth of my articles with the camp newsletter. They can publish them weekly. It'll help keep international attention on this place even after I'm gone. He smiled despite everything. Always the journalist. Always the doctor, she countered, touching the stethoscope around his neck. A horn honked. The convoy was preparing to leave. I have to go, Kate whispered. William pulled her into his arms one last time, memorizing everything. The way she fit against him. The scent of her shampoo somehow still detectable, despite the camp's limited facilities. The feeling of her heart beating against his chest. I love you, he said into her ear. More than you'll ever know. I love you too, she replied, her voice breaking. Stay safe. Please, William, stay safe. They kissed. A desperate, final kiss that had to last for however long they would be apart. Then she pulled away and climbed into the truck without looking back. He understood. If she had looked back, she might not have been able to leave. The convoy began to move, kicking up dust as it headed for the camp's main gate. William stood watching, his hand pressed against the photo in his pocket. Other staff members who were staying stood beside him, a small line of people watching their friends and loved ones disappear into the distance. As the last vehicle passed through the gate, the camp seemed to exhale collectively. Those remaining looked at each other with a mixture of determination and fear. They were alone now, responsible for 10,000 lives with no guarantee of their own safety. Dr. Sarah touched his shoulder gently. "The medical staff meeting is in 10 minutes. We need to reorganize the duty rosters now that we're short-staffed." William nodded, taking one last look at the empty road where the convoy had disappeared. Then, he turned back to the camp, to his duties, to the people who needed him. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red that reminded him uncomfortably of fire. That night, he lay on his narrow cot in the staff quarters, staring at the photo Kate had given him. By the light of a small flashlight, he could make out their faces, happy, unguarded, in love. He wondered where she was now. Had the convoy reached the capital safely? Was she already on a plane to London? Outside, the sound of artillery seemed closer than before. The other doctors in the quarters were quiet, each lost in their own thoughts about who they had said goodbye to that day. William tucked the photo back into his pocket and closed his eyes, trying to remember the sound of Kate's laugh instead of the sound of war. The next morning came too soon, bringing with it new casualties from a village that had been caught in the crossfire. William threw himself into the work with renewed purpose. Each life he saved was a promise kept, to Kate, to himself, to the belief that what they were doing here mattered. As he sutured a wound on a young boy's arm, the child's mother watching anxiously nearby, William thought about Kate's final article before leaving. She had written about the courage of those who stayed. The local doctors and nurses who couldn't evacuate. The teachers who kept holding classes despite the danger. The aid workers who chose duty over safety. She had called them heroes. But William didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a man doing a job that needed to be done, missing the woman he loved with every beat of his heart. The days blurred together after that, without Kate's presence to mark the passage of time. Breakfast conversations, stolen moments between their duties, evening walks through the safer parts of the camp. William found himself working longer and longer hours. It was easier than lying awake thinking about her, wondering if she had made it to London, if she was thinking of him too. 2 weeks after the evacuation, they lost their first staff member. Dr. Markovich, a local physician who had been with the camp since the beginning, was killed when artillery struck the village where he had gone to treat patients. The news hit the medical staff hard. They held a small memorial service, and William found himself speaking about dedication and sacrifice, words that felt hollow in the face of such loss. That night, he wrote his first letter to Kate, not knowing if it would ever reach her. The camp's communication systems were sporadic at best, and mail service had stopped weeks ago. Still, he wrote, pouring out everything he couldn't say in their brief satellite phone calls when the connection worked. "My darling Kate," he began. "The camp feels empty without you, though it's fuller than ever with new arrivals. Yesterday we received 300 people from the northern provinces. Among them was a photographer, a young man who reminds me of you in his determination to document what's happening here. I've been helping him access some of the areas you used to photograph. He doesn't have your eye for finding hope in the midst of despair, but he's trying." He wrote about the Petrov family, how Anna had started calling him Uncle Doctor, and insisted on helping in the medical tent, carrying bandages with the seriousness of a trained nurse. He wrote about the small victories. A successful surgery performed with limited equipment, an outbreak of dysentery contained before it could spread, a premature baby who survived against all odds. He didn't write about the failures, the patients they couldn't save, the medical supplies running dangerously low, the way the fighting seemed to move closer each day. She would worry enough without those details. The satellite phone in the administrator's office rang twice a week if they were lucky. William would wait in line with other staff members, each person allotted 5 minutes to connect with the outside world. When it was his turn, He would dial Kate's number with shaking hands, praying for a connection. "William?" Her voice would come through, crackling with static, but it was the most beautiful sound in the world. "I'm here," he would say. They would race through updates. Her efforts to raise awareness in London. His work at the camp. Carefully avoiding talk of danger, or how much they missed each other. There wasn't time for that luxury. Then the line would cut out, or his 5 minutes would be up, and he would hand the phone to the next person, already counting the days until he might hear her voice again. 1 month after the evacuation, the first good news arrived. Kate's articles had sparked a response. A major international charity announced a new aid package for the camp, including medical supplies and additional funding. The supplies arrived by convoy, and William found a note tucked into one of the boxes. "Keep saving lives. I'm fighting for you from here. K." He kept that note with her photo, twin talismans against the darkness that threatened to overwhelm them all. The London rain hammered against the windows of the BBC building as Kate reviewed her latest segment for the evening news. 3 months had passed since she left the camp. 3 months of fighting to keep Moldania in the public eye, while the world's attention drifted to other crises. Her editor, James, stood behind her, watching the footage she had compiled. "It's powerful stuff, Kate," he said, but his tone suggested a "but" was coming. "But we can only run Moldania stories so often. The viewers are getting fatigue. You know how it is." Kate spun in her chair to face him. Dark circles under her eyes told the story of too many sleepless nights. "Fatigue? Tell that to the 10,000 people still living in that camp. Tell that to the doctors working 20-hour shifts with dwindling supplies." "I'm not the enemy here," James said gently. "I've given you more airtime than any other foreign crisis story this month. But unless something significant happens, something significant?" Kate's voice rose. "People are dying, James. Every day. The fighting is getting closer to the camp. The medical staff is down to half strength. What's more significant than that?" James sighed and pulled up a chair. "Look, I know this is personal for you. Everyone knows about William. But we need a new angle. Something that will make people pay attention again." Kate turned back to her computer, hiding the tears that threatened to spill. Everyone knew about William. She had made the choice to be public about their relationship, hoping it would humanize the crisis, make people care. But now it felt like her private pain had become public property, something for colleagues to whisper about over coffee. Her phone buzzed. A message from Sarah at the camp. "William is okay. Wanted you to know. Supply situation critical. More later when connection better." These sporadic messages were lifelines, each one treasured and feared in equal measure. "William is okay" meant he had been in danger. It meant there had been reason to worry. Kate saved the message and returned to her footage, determined to find the angle that would make people care again. Back in Moldania, William stood in the surgical tent, his hands steady despite the exhaustion that pulled at every muscle. The patient on the table was a government soldier, barely 18, with shrapnel wounds across his abdomen. It didn't matter which side they fought for when they arrived here. Everyone received the same treatment. "More gauze," he instructed the nurse, carefully extracting another piece of metal. They were operating by generator power again. The main power lines had been cut 2 days ago in the fighting. The generator's uneven humming provided a rhythm to work by, punctuated by the distant crack of gunfire. "Doctor, we're almost out of surgical supplies," the nurse informed him quietly. "This is our last sterile kit." William nodded, not breaking his concentration. They would deal with that crisis when this one was handled. They always did. Somehow, supplies appeared when they were most desperately needed. A donation from an international charity Kate had contacted. A delivery from a brave local supplier. Medicine salvaged from abandoned clinics in the conflict zone. The surgery took 3 hours. By the end, William's scrubs were soaked with sweat, and his hands trembled from fatigue. But the soldier would live. Another small victory in a war that seemed to have no end. He stumbled out of the surgical tent to find the camp in controlled chaos. A new wave of refugees had arrived, nearly 500 people from a town that had fallen to rebel forces. They streamed through the gates, carrying what little they had saved, their faces blank with shock. Among them, William recognized a familiar face, Dr. Ilara Thorne, a British physician who had worked at the government hospital in the fallen town. She was supporting an elderly man, her usually pristine appearance replaced by torn clothes and a bandage around her head. "Ilara." William rushed to help her. "What happened?" "The hospital was shelled," she said, her voice hoarse. "Direct hit on the pediatric ward. We tried to evacuate, but—" She trailed off, her eyes haunted. William guided her to the medical tent, his mind already cataloging resources. Another doctor was good news. Even one who was injured and traumatized. They needed all the help they could get. "How many medical staff made it out?" he asked gently as he examined her head wound. "4 nurses, 2 orderlies, and myself. The others?" She shook her head. Dr. Yuskevich stayed to evacuate the last patients. The building collapsed. William closed his eyes briefly. He had known Dr. Yuskevich, a grandfather who had come out of retirement when the war started, insisting his experience was needed. Another loss in a growing list. "You're safe now," he told Ilara. "Rest today. Tomorrow, if you're able, we could use your help. We're desperately short-staffed. Thanks for watching. Today you're SIDS." She nodded, then gripped his arm. "William, it's getting worse out there. The rebels have new weapons, heavy artillery. They're not just fighting the government forces anymore. They're targeting civilian infrastructure. Hospitals, schools, water treatment plants. This camp." She looked around at the crowded tents. "This camp is too visible, too organized. It's only a matter of time." That night, William convened an emergency meeting with the remaining senior staff. They gathered in the administration tent, a map of the region spread before them, marked with red X's where fighting had been reported. "We need to consider evacuation plans," said Marcus, the camp administrator. "Not for us. For the refugees. If the fighting reaches here, we need to be able to move 10,000 people quickly." "To where?" asked one of the nurses. "Every safe zone we've identified is either full or no longer safe." They debated for hours, but no good solutions emerged. The camp was surrounded by conflict on 3 sides, with only a narrow corridor to the south that remained relatively safe. Moving 10,000 people through that corridor would be logistically impossible and dangerous. William thought of Kate as they talked. She would have ideas. She always saw angles others missed, solutions born from her unique perspective. He fingered the photo in his pocket, now worn soft from handling. Meanwhile, in London, Kate sat in a coffee shop near Parliament, her laptop open to her latest article. She had been writing non-stop, pitching stories to every outlet that would listen. Some days it felt like shouting into the void. Other days, like today, there were small victories. "Miss Morrison?" A woman approached her table. "I'm Rebecca Sterling from the Foreign Affairs Committee. I've been reading your articles about the Moldanian crisis." Kate's heart leaped. The Foreign Affairs Committee had the power to influence government policy, to push for increased aid or diplomatic intervention. "Please sit," Kate said, closing her laptop. "Thank you for reading them." Rebecca was younger than Kate expected, with sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything. "Your piece about the medical staff who stayed behind was particularly moving. Dr. William Chen, he's the one you mention frequently?" Kate nodded, not trusting her voice. "My committee is meeting next week to discuss the UK's response to the crisis. We've been focusing on diplomatic solutions, but your articles make it clear that immediate humanitarian aid is what's needed most. I'd like you to testify before the committee. Share what you witnessed. Make them understand why this matters." Kate gripped her coffee cup tightly. "Yes, absolutely. Whatever it takes." "Good. My assistant will contact you with the details." Rebecca stood, then paused. "That photo you published, of the doctor treating a child while explosions lit the sky behind them, was that Dr. Chen?" "Yes," Kate whispered. "He's lucky to have you fighting for him here," Rebecca said. "We'll do what we can." After Rebecca left, Kate sat alone, staring at her laptop screen. The photo Rebecca mentioned was one of her favorites. William completely absorbed in treating a young patient, oblivious to the danger around him. It captured everything she loved about him. Everything that made her terrified for his safety. Her phone rang. An unknown international number. Her heart raced as she answered. Kate? The connection was terrible, but she would recognize that voice anywhere. William, oh God, are you okay? I got Sarah's message. I'm fine, he said quickly. Listen, I don't have long. The fighting is moving closer. We're making contingency plans. I need you to know. The line crackled and cut out. Kate held the phone, willing it to ring again. But it remained silent. Those might have been the last words she heard from him, and she didn't even know what he needed her to know. She returned to her apartment that night to find her flatmate, Emma, cooking dinner. Emma took one look at her and poured 2 large glasses of wine. Bad day? Emma asked. He called. The line cut out. Kate accepted the wine gratefully. The fighting is getting closer to the camp. Emma had been living with Kate's anxiety for 3 months, had held her through nightmares, and celebrated small victories in getting aid to the camp. She was the only person who truly understood the toll this separation was taking. Have you considered going back? Emma asked carefully. I know they evacuated you, but surely now that you have government connections. Every day, Kate admitted. But William would never forgive me. He's staying to keep them safe. I have to stay here to keep them supplied and supported. We each have our role. Very noble, Emma said. Also very stupid. You love each other. You should be together. Kate smiled sadly. Love isn't always about being together. Sometimes it's about being apart for the right reasons. That night, she dreamed of the camp. In her dream, she walked through the familiar paths between tents. But everyone was gone. Only William remained, standing in the middle of the empty medical tent, waiting for patients who would never come. She tried to call to him, but no sound emerged. She ran toward him, but the distance never closed. She woke, gasping, Emma holding her shoulders. Just a dream, Emma soothed. Just a dream. But Kate knew better. Dreams were where her fears lived, where all the possibilities she refused to consider during the day came out to play. The possibility that the camp would be overrun, that the medical supplies would run out completely, that one day she would get a call, but it wouldn't be William on the other end. She got up and went to her desk, opening her laptop. If she couldn't sleep, she could write. She began a new article. This one, about the families in the camp. She wrote about Anna Petrov, the little girl William had saved, who now wanted to be a doctor. She wrote about the teachers who held classes under canvas, determined to give the children some normalcy. She wrote about the old men who gathered each evening to share news from home, keeping hope alive that they would return someday. As dawn broke over London, she finished the article and sent it to every editor she knew. Someone would publish it. Someone had to care. Back at the camp, William was also awake, sitting outside the medical tent and watching the sunrise. It was a rare moment of peace, before the day's chaos began. The sky was clear, promising a hot day ahead, which meant more dehydration cases, more strain on their limited water supplies. Dr. Alara joined him, 2 cups of weak coffee in her hands. Her head wound was healing well, and she had thrown herself into the work with determination that impressed even William. Couldn't sleep either? She asked, handing him a cup. 3 hours, he said. More than usual. They sat in companionable silence for a while, watching the camp wake up. Mothers emerging from tents to start breakfast fires, children heading to the water points with containers, the daily rhythm of survival beginning again. I've been thinking, Alara said, about what you said when I arrived, about being safe here. We both know that's not true. William nodded. There was no point in pretending anymore. The fighting was perhaps 20 kilometers away now. They could hear the explosions at night, see the flashes on the horizon. But I understand why we tell ourselves that, she continued. Hope is like medicine here. Without it, people give up. And when people give up in a place like this, they die, William finished. Yes, you're Kate, The journalist. I've read her articles. She's brilliant. William smiled, the first genuine smile Elara had seen from him. She is. She sees stories where others see statistics. She makes people care. Quote, you miss her. Every moment. He took a sip of the bitter coffee. But she's doing more good in London than she could here. The supplies that arrived last week, the pressure on the UN to establish a protected corridor. That's all her. Still, Elara said gently. It must be hard, being apart during something like this. William was about to respond when they heard shouting from the main gate. They both jumped up, coffee forgotten, and ran toward the commotion. A truck had arrived. Not a military vehicle or aid convoy, but a battered civilian truck, driven by a local man William recognized as a supplier from the nearest town. Doctor, the man called out in accented English. I bring message. And supplies. But message first. Important. William climbed into the truck bed, where boxes of medical supplies were stacked. His heart lifted at the sight. Bandages, antibiotics, surgical equipment. But the man's urgent tone worried him. What message? He asked. The man pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. From the capital. From journalist. She say, tell Dr. William Chen. She coming. Tomorrow? Maybe day after. She found way. 72. William's hands shook as he took the paper. It was a printout of an email, sent through various channels to reach him. William, found independent convoy bringing supplies, convinced them to take me. Foreign Office furious but can't stop me. Testifying to Parliament first, then coming. World is watching now. They won't let camp fall. Hold on. All my love. K. He read it 3 times before the words sank in. Kate was coming back. After 3 months of separation, of fear and longing, she was coming back. But also, the camp was now in the world's spotlight. That could be protection, or it could make them a target. Doctor? Elara had followed him. What is it? Kate, he said simply. She's coming back. Elara's face went through several expressions. Joy for him. Fear for what it meant. Determination to be ready. Then we better make sure there's still a camp for her to return to. They spent the rest of the day distributing the new supplies and reinforcing the medical facilities. If Kate had managed to draw international attention, they might receive more casualties as people heard the camp was still functioning. They needed to be ready. That night, unable to contain his nervous energy, William walked the perimeter of the camp. The security personnel, a mix of UN peacekeepers and local volunteers, nodded as he passed. They all knew him. The doctor who never seemed to sleep, who appeared wherever he was needed most. At the southern checkpoint, he stopped and stared down the road. Somewhere beyond the darkness, Kate was preparing to travel this same route. The thought filled him with equal parts joy and terror. The roads were dangerous. Convoy or no convoy. Rebels and government forces both had checkpoints, and not all of them respected humanitarian missions. She'll make it, a voice said behind him. He turned to find Marcus, the camp administrator. I've seen her work, Doctor. She's resourceful and stubborn. She'll make it. I shouldn't want her to come, William said. It's selfish. She's safer in London. Love is selfish, Marcus replied. It's also selfless. It's both at once. That's what makes it so powerful and so painful. They stood together watching the dark road until the cold drove them back inside. William returned to his quarters and pulled out paper to write another letter he might never send. My darling Kate, he wrote. By the time you read this, you might be here with me again. Or these might be words you read long after. In a safer place. I want to tell you not to come. I want to beg you to come faster. I am torn between protecting you and needing you. Between my duty and my heart. He wrote until his hand cramped, pouring out 3 months of things unsaid. He wrote about the children who had been born in the camp, the lives that had ended, the small miracles and daily tragedies. He wrote about how her articles had saved lives, how the supplies she had fought for had made the difference between hope and despair. Finally, he wrote, "If you are reading this because I am no longer there to say it, know that every life I saved was because you gave me the strength to continue. Every day I worked here, I carried your love with me. It made me brave. It made me better. Come back to me, my love, or don't, but live. Live and tell our story. Make them remember. Make it matter." He sealed the letter and placed it with the others in a box marked with her name. Tomorrow, Sarah would ask again if he wanted to send them through the Red Cross channels. Tomorrow, he would say no again, because to send them felt like admitting he might not get to say the words in person. Outside, the first light of dawn was breaking. Somewhere in that light, Kate was coming home to him. The camp was waking up to another day of survival. Another day of hope against impossible odds. And William Chen, exhausted beyond measure but filled with renewed purpose, prepared to face whatever came next. The world was watching now. Kate had made sure of that. All they had to do was hold on a little longer. The convoy appeared on the horizon just after midday. A line of vehicles kicking up dust against the harsh sun. William stood at the main gate with several other staff members, his heart pounding so hard he was sure everyone could hear it. 3 months and 4 days since he had watched Kate leave. Now, squinting against the glare, he could see the vehicles clearly. 2 trucks loaded with supplies, and a white SUV bearing press credentials. "That's them," Marcus confirmed, lowering his binoculars. "I can see the BBC marking on the side vehicle." William wanted to run down the road to meet them, but he forced himself to wait. The camp had protocols, even for returning journalists. Especially now, with the situation so precarious, the security team needed to clear the vehicles, verify the passengers, ensure no one had been compromised or followed. The minutes stretched like hours as the convoy approached. William could see faces through the windshields now. And then, there she was, Kate, in the passenger seat of the SUV, leaning forward as if she could will the vehicle to move faster. The convoy stopped at the checkpoint. Standard procedure, William reminded himself as the security team began their checks. But when Kate climbed out of the vehicle, all thoughts of procedure vanished. She looked different, thinner, with a hardness in her eyes that hadn't been there before. 3 months of fighting bureaucracy and public indifference had left their mark. But when she saw him, her face transformed with a smile that made his knees weak. They moved toward each other slowly at first, as if afraid the other might disappear. Then, Kate broke into a run, and William caught her as she threw herself into his arms. For a moment, the camp, the war, the danger, all of it faded away. There was only Kate, solid and real in his arms, her face buried in his chest as she sobbed. "You're here," he whispered into her hair. "You're really here." "I'm here," she confirmed, pulling back to look at him. Her hands cupped his face, thumbs tracing the new lines etched by exhaustion and stress. "God, William, you look terrible." He laughed, surprising himself. You always knew how to flatter a man. Around them, the camp staff was efficiently unloading the supplies Kate had brought. Medical equipment, antibiotics, water purification tablets, and incredibly, a small, portable ultrasound machine they had been desperate for. "How did you manage all this?" William asked as they walked toward the medical tent, his arm firmly around her waist, as if she might vanish if he let go. "The testimony to Parliament helped," Kate explained. "Your story, the camp's story, it finally broke through. The Foreign Secretary authorized emergency aid, and when I said I was coming back to document its delivery, well, they couldn't exactly stop me. Though they tried. God, did they try." In the medical tent, the staff greeted Kate with tears and embraces. She had become a legend here. The journalist who kept their story alive, who fought for them from afar. Dr. Ilara shook her hand firmly. "Your articles saved lives," Ilara said simply. "The medical supplies that arrived last month, Let us treat a tuberculosis outbreak that could have devastated the camp. Thank you. Kate's professional composure cracked slightly. I just wrote what I saw. You all did the real work. Don't minimize what you did, William said. You made the world pay attention. That's no small thing. They spent the afternoon touring the camp, Kate documenting the changes with her camera. The camp had grown by 2,000 people since she left, new sections sprawling beyond the original boundaries. The medical facilities had been reinforced with sandbags, a grim acknowledgement of the approaching danger. Kate interviewed refugees, gathering their stories with the same compassion and attention to detail that had made her earlier work so powerful. William watched her work, marveling at her ability to make people feel heard, to find the human story in the midst of statistics and suffering. As evening fell, they finally had a moment alone in William's quarters. The same sparse room where he had spent so many sleepless nights, thinking of her. Kate sat on his narrow cot, looking around at the bare walls, the box of unsent letters on his desk. Are those? She began. Letters. To you. He sat beside her. I wrote them but never sent them. It felt too much like goodbye. She leaned against him, and for a while they just sat, reacquainting themselves with the simple pleasure of being together. But the distant sound of artillery reminded them that their reunion existed in borrowed time. How bad is it really? Kate asked. The fighting. William was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. The government forces are falling back. The rebels will reach this area within days, maybe a week if we're lucky. The UN is negotiating for a humanitarian corridor. But negotiations take time. And the rebels aren't exactly following international law, Kate finished. I know. I've been tracking the situation. William, there's something else. The reason I had to come back now. She pulled out a folder from her bag, spreading documents on the small desk. The international community is planning a mass evacuation. Not just staff, this time. Everyone. The refugees, the medical personnel, everyone. They're calling it Operation Safe Haven. William studied the documents, his heart sinking. When? 4 days. Maybe 5. They're still coordinating with neighboring countries for refugee placement. Kate took his hand. William, this time you have to leave too. There won't be anyone left to treat. 4 days, he repeated. And the refugees? All 10,000? 12,000 now, with the new arrivals. They'll be relocated to camps in Romania and Poland. It's not ideal, but it's better than being caught in the crossfire. They talked through the logistics until late into the night. How to prepare 12,000 people for evacuation. How to ensure the medical cases could travel. What to do about those too sick to move. It was an impossible task, but they had faced impossible before. Finally, exhausted, they lay together on the narrow cot, holding each other in the darkness. Kate traced patterns on William's chest, feeling his heartbeat under her palm. I'm scared, she admitted. Not of the danger. Of losing you again. Of not being strong enough to leave if I have to. Quote, we'll leave together this time, William promised. When the evacuation comes, we go together. But even as he said it, both knew that promises were fragile things in a war zone. The next morning brought chaos. Overnight, the fighting had intensified, and streams of new refugees arrived at the gates. The medical tent overflowed with casualties. Civilians caught in the crossfire. Children injured by unexploded ordnance. Elderly people suffering from exposure and dehydration after fleeing their homes. William and his team worked frantically, triaging patients and trying to stabilize the most critical cases. Kate documented everything, her camera capturing the controlled chaos of medical professionals pushed beyond their limits but refusing to break. Around noon, a commotion at the main gate drew their attention. A government military convoy had arrived, but these weren't ordinary soldiers. William recognized the insignia of the Military Medical Corps. The convoy commander, Colonel Harrison, sought out William immediately. Dr. Chen? I have orders from the evacuation committee. We need to establish a forward medical post between here and the front lines. We need experienced trauma surgeons who know the area. William felt Kate's hand grip his arm. A forward post? That's a suicide mission. The front lines are constantly shifting. Which is why we need people who can work under extreme conditions, the colonel replied. It's voluntary, of course, but without that post, wounded civilians and soldiers alike will die before reaching proper medical facilities. The evacuation can't proceed safely without it. I'll go, William said immediately. No, Kate said, her voice sharp. William. No. We agreed. That was before this. He turned to her, seeing the fear and anger in her eyes. Kate, you know I have to do this. People will die without that forward post. People will die anyway. She was shouting now, not caring who heard. You can't save everyone. You promised we'd leave together. The colonel stepped back diplomatically. I'll give you some time to discuss. We leave in 2 hours. As he walked away, Kate rounded on William. You promised. You looked me in the eye last night and promised. I know. William's voice was quiet, pained. I know what I promised. But Kate, how can I evacuate to safety, knowing that I could have saved lives by staying? How can I board that plane? The same way thousands of refugees will. Because living matters too. Because there are other battles to fight. Other lives to save. Tears streamed down her face. Because I can't lose you. Not again. Not like this. They argued for an hour, voices raised and tears shed. Camp staff gave them a wide berth, recognizing the impossible position they were in. Finally, emotionally exhausted, they sat outside the medical tent, watching the camp prepare for evacuation. I have to go, William said finally. You know I do. It's who I am. I know, Kate whispered. God help me, I know. It's why I love you, and why I hate this so much. The forward post is only for 48 hours, just until the evacuation is complete. Then I'll pull back with the military convoy. He took her hands. 2 days, Kate. Give me 2 days to make sure the evacuation route is clear. Then I'll meet you at the staging area. You're asking me to leave you again. Her voice was hollow. You're asking me to get on an evacuation transport, not knowing if you're alive or dead. I'm asking you to trust me. And to do your job, document the evacuation. Make sure the world sees what's happening here. Be their voice. He pulled her close. And in 2 days, we'll be on a plane out of here together. I swear it. Kate pulled back to look at him, memorizing every line of his face. 2 days. Not an hour more. If you're not at that staging area in 48 hours, I will come looking for you myself. Deal, he said, attempting a smile. They spent his remaining time preparing, gathering medical supplies for the forward post, ensuring the camp medical staff could handle the evacuation without him. Kate took photos of him working, knowing with terrible certainty that these might be the last images she had of him. When the military convoy was ready to leave, the entire camp seemed to gather. Word had spread that Dr. Chen was going to the front lines to protect the evacuation route. Refugees pressed forward to touch his hands, to offer blessings in a dozen languages. Anna Petrov broke through the crowd and wrapped her arms around his legs. Uncle Doctor, no go, she sobbed. Please no go. William knelt to her level, his own eyes wet. I have to help people, little one. Just like when I helped you. But I'll come back. I promise. He stood and faced Kate. The world seemed to stop. Everyone watching as they embraced. This wasn't like the first goodbye. With its desperate promises and hidden tears, this was raw, public, a love story playing out against the backdrop of war. Come back to me, Kate said against his lips. Whatever happens, come back to me, always, he promised. Then he was climbing into the military vehicle, and Kate was standing with the crowd, watching another convoy carry him away. But this time, she wasn't leaving. This time she would wait, and document, and pray. The next 48 hours were the longest of Kate's life. She threw herself into documenting the evacuation preparations, interviewing refugees about their hopes and fears, capturing the massive logistical operation of moving 12,000 people. But always, part of her attention was on the horizon, listening for news from the forward medical post. Reports trickled in sporadically. The medical post was operational. They had treated over 100 casualties in the first day. The fighting was intensifying, but the evacuation route remained open. No news about specific personnel, about one doctor who meant everything to her. On the morning of the second day, the evacuation began. A massive convoy of buses, trucks, and UN vehicles began loading refugees. Families clutched their possessions, children cried. Elderly people were carried on stretchers. It was orderly chaos, a testament to the planning and preparation of the camp staff. Kate positioned herself at a vantage point, camera capturing the exodus. Through her lens, she saw stories. The Petrov family boarding a bus. Anna clutching a toy stethoscope someone had given her. The teachers carrying boxes of the children's artwork, determined to preserve some beauty from this place. The medical staff loading their most critical patients into ambulances for the journey. As the hours passed and the camp emptied, Kate's anxiety grew. The 48-hour deadline was approaching. The last buses were loading. Still no sign of the medical convoy returning from the forward post. Kate. Sarah approached, out of breath. Marcus just got word. The forward post is under fire. They're pulling back now. But Kate didn't wait to hear the rest. She ran to the communication tent, where Marcus was on the radio. His face grim. Say again, forward post. What's your status? He listened, then cursed. Understood. We'll have medical standing by. He looked up at Kate. They're coming. But they have casualties. William. He paused, choosing his words carefully. William was operating when they took fire. He's injured, but he's alive. They're 10 minutes out. Kate's legs nearly gave out. Injured could mean anything. But alive. She would take alive. The 10 minutes felt like 10 hours. Then she saw the dust cloud of approaching vehicles. Moving fast. Too fast. The lead vehicle had bullet holes across its side, the windshield spider-webbed with cracks. The convoy screeched to a halt, and medics rushed forward. Kate pushed through them, searching desperately. Then she saw him. William. On a stretcher. His surgical scrubs soaked with blood. His blood. Shrapnel to the left shoulder and chest, someone was saying. Lost a lot of blood, but vitals are stable. He insisted on finishing the surgery before letting us treat him. Of course he did. Kate thought through her tears. She gripped his hand as they loaded him into an ambulance. His eyes fluttered open, focusing on her face. Kate? His voice was weak but clear. Did everyone make it out? Everyone's safe. She assured him. The evacuation is almost complete. You did it, William. You saved them. Class. Caber tack. 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 He smiled, then winced. Told you. 2 days. The next hours blurred together. The race to the airport. The emergency surgery on the evacuation plane. The touch-and-go moments when his heart rate dropped dangerously low. Kate never left his side, her hand in his, willing him to fight. By the time they landed in London, William was stable but critical. As they transferred him to the ambulance that would take him to the hospital, Kate finally allowed herself to break down. They had made it out. They were alive. But at what cost? 2 weeks later, Kate stood in William's hospital room, watching him sleep. The doctors said he would make a full recovery, though it would take months of rehabilitation. The shrapnel had missed his heart by centimeters. A miracle, they called it. Kate called it typical William luck, equal parts good and bad. Her editor, James, sat in the visitor's chair, reviewing her latest article on his tablet. She had written about the evacuation, about the heroism of those who stayed until the last possible moment. about the forward medical post that had saved hundreds of lives at the cost of nearly losing one of its doctors. "It's powerful," James said. "The image of the empty camp, after 12,000 people were successfully evacuated. It's haunting. And the story of Dr. Chen, operating while under fire, finishing the surgery even after being hit." He shook his head. "Hollywood couldn't write this. Don't give them ideas," Kate said dryly. William stirred, his eyes opening slowly. He smiled when he saw her. The same smile that had sustained her through their separation. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey yourself." She moved to sit on the edge of his bed, careful of his bandages. "How's the pain?" "Manageable." "How's the article?" "James loves it. The BBC wants to do a full documentary about the camp, the evacuation, everything." She hesitated. "They want to focus on our story, the doctor and the journalist who fell in love in a war zone." William was quiet for a moment. "What do you think?" "I think our story is part of a bigger one, about thousands of people who showed courage, who survived the impossible." She took his hand. "But if telling our part helps people remember, helps prevent the next crisis, then maybe it's worth sharing." "Always the journalist," he said fondly. "Always the doctor," she replied. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the London rain through the hospital window. The camp was gone now, bulldozed by the advancing forces. The refugees were scattered across a dozen countries, starting new lives far from home. The civil war continued, though peace talks had finally begun. "What happens now?" William asked eventually. "To us, I mean." Kate had been thinking about this for days. "You heal. I write. We figure out what comes next together. There are other crises, other camps, other people who need help." "You want to go back out there?" He sounded surprised. "Don't you?" She studied his face. "William, what happened in Moldania? It changed us. We can't just go back to normal lives, pretending we didn't see what we saw, didn't learn what we're capable of." He nodded slowly. "You're right. But next time, we go together. From the beginning. No more separations." "No more separations," she agreed. A year later, they stood before a small crowd in a chapel in Geneva, exchanging vows. The guests included aid workers, journalists, and refugees from the Moldanian camp who had made new lives in Europe. Anna Petrov served as flower girl, proudly wearing a dress her mother had made from fabric bought with her first paycheck in their new home. William's shoulder still ached on cold days, and Kate still woke sometimes thinking she heard artillery fire. They were scarred, both of them, by what they had witnessed and endured, but they were also stronger, bonded by something deeper than mere love. A shared purpose, a commitment to bearing witness and bringing healing to the darkest places. As they exchanged rings, Kate thought about the photo in William's pocket during their separation, now framed on their apartment wall. Next to it hung a new photo. The two of them at the empty campsite, standing where the medical tent had been, honoring all those who had found refuge there. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the officiant said, and as William kissed her, Kate heard the click of cameras capturing the moment. Tomorrow, they would fly to Bangladesh, where a new crisis demanded attention. There would be more camps, more separations, more impossible choices, but for today, in this moment, they were simply William and Kate. Two people who had found each other in the midst of chaos and held on through the storm. The world watched, no longer in silence but in celebration, as love triumphed over war, hope over despair, and two hearts finally found their way home to each other. Outside the chapel, snow began to fall, covering the world in a blanket of white. It was a new beginning, a fresh start, and somewhere in the distance, a child laughed. The sound of life continuing, of futures being written, of stories yet to be told.